Oh, okay. There you are. Thank you for cutting out a little bit of your day to sit down, just chat for a few minutes. Like the last time I saw you,
Is it?
wow,
Has it been since the new year?
right? But you were
Oh,
pretty well. Hey,
I
the,
was at. Yeah, you're right. I was at the new spot in January, so it would
yeah.
have been before 2020.
So, well, happy 2020, happy New Year.
Appreciate it.
You bet, you bet. So yeah, it's been months at least since I've seen you for sure, if not the better part of a year. So, um, like, what has life been like for you?
Dude, well, barring any COVID discussion, I mean, it's been it's been a whirlwind of the last probably 9 months or so, in a good way, mostly. Um, yeah, so Cross and Crown kind of was asked or had the opportunity to kind of step into a pre-existing ministry that had been going on for about 30, 35 years. And one of our partnering churches that's overseen that for better part of 20 of those years asked Cross and Crown to take over the management and the daily functions of that ministry. And so I've been over there full time since January, and then before that, I was kind of in and out, kind of splitting time between Cross and Crown, our main site, and the Christian Service Center, which is on the south side of the city. I'd spend half my day at one and half of the other, just to kind of continue my commitments at Cross and Crown, but also to kind of get my feet in the door at the new place and figure out what that ministry was about. So,
Yeah,
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 man.
dude. Like that's because that was not on anybody's radar, correct?
No, I mean, honestly, so we're in July. I would say it hadn't even been it's close to a year. Within the year or 9 months of the preliminary talks of this ministry on the south side, it was kind of brought to our attention. Um, Not necessarily from the get-go of us running it or facilitating um, like the bulk of ministry, but more or less just asking for some input, just because we've been at Cross and Crown for close to 20 years. And so the church that was responsible for that ministry approached us and said, we see what goes on at Cross and Crown, and obviously they love just the way that we're relational with people and the way that we prioritize relationships and point people to Jesus. And so they said, we're kind of in a transition at this new place, and so as we transition, we would appreciate if you guys could kind of give us some pointers or give us a little bit of vision and help facilitate that transition. And so we were happy to have those conversations. We weren't really sure what that looked like. It was kind of one of those things where we weren't really sure what we were being asked to do, but we were willing to help because we're willing. I mean, we want to partner and do what we can to further the kingdom. And so we said, yeah, we'll talk. So just tell us when to show up or where to be, and we'll answer questions and tell you the best practices that we've learned from just trying things out. And so we had 2 or 3 of those discussions where we met with the church and some other leaders and talked about vision and kind of where they wanted to go with it. And just the more that we met, and Paul, my father, Drew, my brother, and I, and then another one of our Roberto that's on staff at Cross and Crown, we talked about just kind of what that would look like. And the more we talked about it, God kind of just put a fire in me and kind of gave me some extra motivation to kind of dig deeper and to be more prayerful about what our level of involvement could look like there. And so, that's kind of the origins of how we became a little bit more invested in, just the future of that ministry. So I didn't know it would look like us, Cross and Crown, kind of taking over completely. I thought it might just mean that I spend some time there and just kind of serve in ways that I already did, but just in a new site. But God kind of took those prayers and accelerated them, which I'm happy He did, but it was definitely nothing that I could have foreseen within 6 to 9 months of happening. So.
kind of always how the best things do happen, though, right?
Yeah, they do. You're right. It seems to work out. You know, God knows what He's doing, and I was happy to be along for the ride. Still am. I mean, we're on the ride right now. It's interesting because I'm over there. So I had, so let's see, probably mid-October. I started going over there, October, November, and then the first couple weeks in December, just to be there with the former director. He was still the director, and so I just kind of stepped in of just observing, just kind of being there as a volunteer, more or less. And I just wanted to become familiar with what they did, and then more than anything, to meet the people in the community that were already there serving. That was kind of a unique dimension to their ministries. They've been there for 40 years, and they have volunteers that have been there for 15, 17 years. And so, you know, I try to put myself in their shoes and consider, you know, what would it be like in a transition if Paul, he's been the director at Cross and Crown, if he stepped away and a new director came in, you know, that would be difficult for many of those volunteers to kind of move with that transition. And so I wanted to, the best I could to honor them and to respect, and also to glean from their wisdom of what they already knew. So for 3 months, I just showed up and just volunteered for 3 or 4 hours a day. And then in January 1st, officially, I took over as the full-time on-site director there. And so I got like 2.5 months in, and then COVID hit. So I just started to get some consistency and kind of get my feet underneath me, get a little bit of a rhythm, and then all this just pulled out from underneath us. And so we've kind of reopened with some different restrictions for the last 3 weeks. But just like everywhere else, I mean, that fluctuates. We're already having to kind of scale back on some things that we're doing because of just, you know, the increase in numbers and what have you. But it seems weird to say, but it's fun. I mean, it's fun just to kind of just jump into the middle of everything and learn as we go.
And it's amazing to think kind of the preparation of training, because you'd been doing, you know, that full-time work at the main point of the mission since what, 2010?
Full-time since 2006.
Okay, so wow, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so the mission started in 2000, and then I graduated high school in 2002, and then like every summer in between college, I would come back and intern. So I interned for 4 years. And then when I graduated in 2006, I got offered a full-time position. And so I've been there at some capacity for 18 years, and then full-time for coming on 16. So, or 14, I'm sorry. So, yeah.
Is the energy for it feel the same as kind of when you began? Like, I mean, is it still resonate as that type of dynamic?
It does. And it's interesting because it's different. So like when I was interning, I worked exclusively with the youth. I mean, there were some things that I did for like Cross and Crown, whether it was, you know, being in the prayer room, sitting down with an adult, somebody 15, 20 years older than me, and praying. But like even then, I mean, I was pretty immature in my walk with Jesus. I mean, just my understanding of the gospel and like the reasons that I was doing what I was doing were a little different. And so my energy, I was just excited. You know, I was just really, you know, out of college, I'm happy to have a full-time job to get a paycheck. I mean, it was half of it. And so, and then certainly working closely with my father at the time, at the time, he's still my father, but just that energy from working with my dad.
January 1st.
It's over. So, and then like working with youth, I think it was in 2010 or 11, I became the full-time youth director. So my energy then was, I kind of had a surge in energy, but for different reasons. And then working with the youth, I mean, it's up and down as far as energy goes. I mean, you're with kids, they got energy nonstop. So what I had to learn was like my motivation for doing the work that I did and continue to do, it had to be more deeply rooted in the gospel and in Jesus is my identity in Jesus, more than it was just because I enjoyed certain work. So like, not to take anything away from, you know, being with kids, because that's certainly fun and I enjoy that. But there'd be times where I'm like, I'm tired, this kid's being obnoxious, so my energy's low today. And so I'm not going to be highly motivated to work. I'm I'm just going to show up, clock in. I mean, just like any other job, you can show up and clock in at times. But as I started to mature more in my walk with Jesus and get more rooted in Scripture, like my identity became more solid, and I'm confident in who I am in Christ. But then also my motivation was no longer contingent on like if a kid was a jerk or not, or if a kid had good energy when I saw him after school or not. It was my energy is going to be consistent, the majority of the time. And then depending on how you are, I'll try to lift you up. And so now I'm not working with youth, and so my energy is, I would consider high, but for different reasons. I mean, I'm excited just for the opportunity, just to be in a different part of the city where there's great need. And so that's been my prayer since the first day that I ever even considered being on the South Side. Was like, God, here I am, use me. If it's your will, I'm there. If it's not, I'll stay. And I'm just happy to be a part of whatever you're doing. And so that's kind of where I pull a lot of my energy from, because it's a blessing to be able to do the work that we do. There are difficulties and struggles and things a part of my job. I mean, I work with people, so like there are things that I certainly don't love or enjoy. But at the end of the day, like to take a step back and to really evaluate all that I'm able to be a part of, it's a huge blessing. And so that I really don't even have to remind myself of that often, because God has been good to me and keeping that at the forefront of my mind. So
The transition is to be given an unexpected opportunity for really a complete change of scenery and routine and surroundings and knowledge. Totally unexpected. Like, talk about some of the ways, because you guys mentioned, I think, some of your people, or this ended up connecting with a good portion of people who had already come to Cross and Crown, except for now their commute is
right. So Cross and Crown, like we consider a certain part of the community like our target zone. So like if you're familiar with the area, Northwest 16th to like Northwest 2nd or 3rd, and then would be North-South boundaries, and then Penn and Classen or Western would be like our East-West. That's kind of, I mean, just conversationally, like when we consider like our neighborhood or the neighborhood, that's kind of what we think of. But like we certainly serve anyone from anywhere. I mean, we had people come from Midwest City, Del City. We've had people come from Blanchard. I mean, when people have a need, there's no limits to, how far you can go to meet those needs. So anyway, like even as recent as 2-3 years ago, like if you were to go through our list of clients or people that come for assistance, I would imagine probably half of them, maybe more, have addresses from Southeast or Southwest Oklahoma City, which, I mean, to this point, I mean, we hadn't really thought much about it. It's just kind of the reality of what happened. Not a whole lot of people would come from the north side south. A lot of people from the south would come up to the north. And so just kind of the layout of the city and how, how things have transpired. But so since being on the south side, I would say at least on a weekly basis, not quite a daily basis, but a weekly basis so far, at least one family will come in for assistance for either food or clothes that I already know. And so it's really interesting. Immediately when I see them, like I know the context in which I would know them from. If I don't remember their names, some of them I remember names, but some I don't, but I know how I know them. It's funny when they see me, you can tell they're like, oh, we know him. That's that white dude, here's that white guy. Where's he from? And so it's funny, I'll approach them and say, hey, I think I know you. And they'll say, yeah. And so anyway, we'll make that connection. It's really cool. And you can tell, like, that's already that's huge. Like the years that I've had at Cross and Crown, that even before I was there were relationships with Paul and even with Ron and others that they had built those, and I stepped into those. So now I have those relationships as I go south. So that's already barriers that have been broken down where I've been accelerated due to the work of other people. And it's really fun to see that, because like a lot of the new people I'm meeting, it's tough. Like they don't know me. There's no reason for them to trust me. I mean, honestly, some of these initial weeks and months that I have is just building trust with people before like their real ministry can happen. I'm just trying to build rapport with them and get them to basically believe why I'm there. And that's to love them and to to honor them and to point them to Jesus. And so like to have somebody come in that they already know that like, oh, we know Luke, we know his family, we know they've been serving the neighborhood for 20 years. Like they already have that trust. And so it's just those seeds that God has just grown and grown and grown. I mean, that's just it. I gain a lot of joy from that aspect of the ministry, having those relationships already. So yeah, we have, like I said, at least on a weekly basis, there's a family that comes in and they're excited that, like you said, we're so much closer to them in proximity that they don't have to make a 15-minute drive. They can, in some cases, walk 2 or 3 blocks. So that's a huge deal.
When we get to see glimpses of it coming back around, that fruit that lasts type of thing, and where, oh, these plants are still blossoming and producing these areas. But I think the word you used, accelerated, is also the impact that those extra little plants of where you've already been working for years come back to fruition and giving you those fruits.
Yeah, no, you're right, man. And that's what you're describing, like seeing some of those fruits that you may not even necessarily have planted, but like maybe you watered it or you tended to it. And then to see that come back around, full circle or even half circle, that's, we're talking about energy for like ministry or work. Like that's energy right there. I mean, that right there will carry you for a few months. And especially like a lot of that I get now. So I'm 36, I'll be 37 in 2 or 3 weeks. And so I have 10-ish years full-time and then 14 years part-time where I work with youth. And so, man, the biggest high that I get is whenever I had a kid that I met when I was 22. I met him when he was, 12, 13. And now here I am 36 and he's 23, 24, 25. He's got a wife, he's got kids, or he's in a great spot and he comes back around just to chop it up, to catch up. Or even the kid that, dropped out of high school at 16 and goes to jail and gets caught up in the gang life and gets caught in the streets. But then they come back, they make a little bit of a turnaround, 21, 22, and they catch back, they link up with me and they're like, Luke, like all these years you were doing this, and this, and tell me about Jesus and trying to keep me straight. Like I got it wrong then. Like, let me know now. Like that's the fruit. Again, we don't know when it's gonna produce, but like I trust. That's why like Jesus has that. Like you said, just be obedient, do the work the fields, labor, and then Jesus does the rest. And that's the energy. That stuff gets me fired up. So
yeah,
for sure.
There aren't words that can quantify what that means, but it is well beyond any compensation that a dollar sign or a bottom line can give you to keep moving forward.
Right. You're right.
How can people, so you're at a different location now. You're not in the same spot. You're on the south side of Oklahoma City as opposed to the 10th of McKinley.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's literally, I drive back and forth between the two, not every day, but every other day, because there's still like the Christian Service Center on the south side. It's a much smaller facility. It's 4,500 square feet max. Some things are switched up, but we're still very limited. So like we have food and clothes and a prayer room. So like medical needs, legal aid needs, youth services, those are just non-existent at this time. And honestly, just the way that God works and all that, it's probably a good thing that we don't just have unlimited resources, or we probably would have just done those things rather than really rooted ourselves in just showing up and learning, what God was already doing there. So it's a microcosm is what I kind of explain it sometimes of Cross and Crown. It's what Cross and Crown might have looked like 16, 17 years ago if the building was a quarter of the size that it is. So like even in our volunteer base, we already, like I said, there's already the volunteers that are there have been coming for some 10 plus years. Like the last thing I want to do is run them off. And so I have to balance keeping them and making sure they know they still have a role there. But then also we do need to bring in some new volunteers and get new energy in there and people that have a similar vision. So finding that balance is kind of what I'm doing right now. But yeah, south side, north side, it's a 10-minute drive, and yeah, it's not too bad. Yeah, and we're right in the middle of a neighborhood, right next door to me. I got a family, 2 moms and a kid, and then on the other side of me, there's a gentleman that has a duplex, got some grandkids in there. So just like Crossing Crown, I mean, we're in the neighborhood, and our building looks like a old, very small church building.
So if people wanted to help or volunteer or lend resources specifically toward you guys, what's the process? Is it the same as just getting to Crossing Crown, or what would they do there?
So you can do it, you know, COVID stuff is just really messing everything up. So like normally you could take them to either spot. Like at this point, this Christian Service Center, we have a plethora of clothing. We do need the one thing, if I were to identify one thing that we really need, is we need people that are like-minded in their approach to ministry. So, and what I mean by that is we need people to come use their hands and use their skill sets to, you know, fix things and paint things and organize things. There's tons of that. But more than anything, we need gospel-centered people who have a firm grip on their faith and have a desire to share that faith with other people, because in word and deed. So like we need someone to sit down with. Some of our volunteers, they don't profess Jesus. They're just there because they want to help, which is great. I love that. And that kind of is a little different from Crossing Crown too, because it was established as a place of faith, and then people came along that said, I love Jesus, let me help. This place has kind of been operating in a mode that if you just want to help, you can help, which is great. But there are people that do volunteer that don't have a faith. And so to kind of change the culture there, which is a big part of what we're trying to do there, is we need other people of faith to kind of step in, 1 or 2 at a time, and just to stand shoulder to shoulder with people, work together, and then just share your life and how you live out following Jesus. And you can do that you can directly contact me, email, phone, and I'll say, come on this day at this time for an hour, for 4 hours, whatever you want to do. All right, Brody, I'm going to bounce. I got a screaming baby.
Dude, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Enjoy it, and
Yes, sir.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right, homie. See you, bud.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Coy. See you next time on Coy's Corner.